After a tumultuous 3 year stretch for the Villanova basketball program, the last portion of which left most Wildcats fans clamoring for change, a new direction has arrived on the main line. But now that Kevin Willard is in the midst of his first offseason piloting the program, what will that change look like? We've got thoughts next on Holy Nova. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Holy Nova, part of the Big East Energy Network. I'm Janus with David White. David, it's a tale as old as time. When something isn't working, fans are quick to look for something different. That's why NFL backup quarterback might be the most popular position in all of sports. But for Nova, change had become necessary after Kyle Neptune followed Jay Wright's retirement by missing the NCAA tournament 3 straight years. Wasn't exactly a smooth path to landing Kevin Willard during the offseason as the program's new head coach, but he's here and has spent the offseason reworking the program into his own, which brings us to our topic today. What can we expect to look different now that Kevin Willard is in charge? To me, David, it starts with his experience. Kevin Willard has been at this for a while and has proven he's pretty good at it. How big of an asset do you think that'll be?
I think that's huge. I mean, Kyle Neptune spent one season at Fordham as a head coach. He never really got his footing as a head coach. And quite honestly, when you're following a legend like Jay Wright and you never walk the sidelines of the head coach, it's hard to uh, keep up. He was trying, I think, to be Jay Wright because that's who he learned under. He spent 8 years on the sidelines with Jay. With Kevin Willard, he's been at Iona. He's had success at every stop. I mean, Iona, Seton Hall to Maryland. So he's going to be confident in that he knows basketball. He knows how to control a locker room. He knows how to win. And I think those are the intangible things that you can't teach a coach right out on their first job.
I think it's such a good point the way you worded that earlier too. In terms of Kyle Neptune, it might be a little bit unfair to say that he was doing a Jay Wright impersonation, but it did seem like he was trying to take Jay Wright's program and just move it forward, which in a lot of ways is why he was hired, right? It's understandable. Jay Wright did it better than anybody ever has in Villanova, as well as anybody has in a long time in the college game overall. But you have to be yourself. You can follow a mold, but at the end of the day, the players want to hear from you. They want that genuine nature to kind of come through a little bit more. And I think at times maybe Kyle was better at that behind closed doors. I think he was when you listen to people that were close to and inside the program, they seem to allude to that quite a bit. But publicly, it did seem like there was an attempt to really just make sure everybody knows we're carrying on exactly what they were doing under Jay Wright. This is the same program. Everything's good. We're just moving it forward. And that clearly did not work. You have to be yourself. And Kevin Willard, if we learn nothing else during March, the man is himself, right? I mean, how easy would it have been for him going through everything he was during the transition and during the tournament run, when all the rumors started creeping up, when all the questions started to be asking? You would think that he would go into total coach speak and start saying nothing. Instead, he probably said way too much and probably hurt his own national reputation in a lot of ways by doing so. But I also, I gotta be honest, I appreciated the honesty. I thought it refreshing, even if maybe it wasn't the best decision or piece of strategy at that particular time. But I think it speaks to the kind of guy he is and the kind of guy you're getting at Villanova.
Well, I think he's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't with that. You can either be Ed Cooley, who just pretended like he had never heard the name Georgetown when he left, or you can be Will Wade, who said, I'm leaving for NC State. We're going to have fun while we're here. I think Kevin Willard kind of took a path in between those two. But I think no matter what happens, the national media is going to find some way to critique it. But back to Kyle Neptune for just a second. I mean, it's hard to, on your first job, when the buck stops with you. As an assistant, you can have the best ideas in the world, but ultimately everything gets funneled to the head coach. And just I think tailoring his style, tailoring what he wants to do, he needed a couple more years, and I wish him the best. I hope he gets that opportunity again because I think he could be a really good coach. Uh, Kevin Willard has done it. He's spoken to assistants. He's gotten ideas from his bench, and then he implements what he wants to implement. So I think that that will be a huge asset to the Nova sideline.
And I think the other thing is he can point to his success. He's been there, done that before, but he can also bring in some new ideas, find a way to keep the ones that he wants to from the Jay Wright system. And as he's talked about, he is this steward of Jay Wright's program. It still belongs to the legend, but he's now kind of taken charge of it. And I think he can thread that needle much easier. Whereas I think Kyle Neptune was absolutely trying to do that, but
Mhm.
it just didn't work out. I mean, as soon as some adversity hit, all of a sudden, when you see Jay Wright in the stands talking to players during practice, obviously, I think intellectually, we both know that's probably an asset to the program. Doesn't instill a ton of confidence that the new head coach is seeking that fast counsel out of the previous head coach who. I don't think he was still running the program or anything like that, but it did have a sort of a Wizard of Oz type feel to it, didn't it? Who's actually behind the curtain and how much is he pushing the buttons from his TV gig up in New York?
Certainly. I mean, I think when like you said, you see him at practice, you see him all around the program. I mean, when you think of two other legends, you have Coach K, who basically said he's not going to come around Duke because he wants John Shire to be his own person. And you have Roy Williams, who's at every game, but you never hear about him at practice. You never hear about him behind the scenes with the team. So there are some questions when Jay Wright spends that much time with the team outside of just normal gameplay of, well, who's actually running the program right now? I agree with you. I think that's a totally normal question to ask.
I think it was just, one of those bad look type of things. I actually think it was fine. I don't think there was all that much that you had to worry about. I think Kyle Neptune was in charge. I don't think Jay Wright was being that hands on, but the optics of it were bad. And that was part of Kyle Neptune's problem as well. If you weren't going to win right away, you got to win all the optic games. And when you lose both, things can go awry in a hurry. But back on the Kevin Willard front, the other thing, not only can he point to his success, you mentioned the time at Iona, Big East success at Seton Hall, got to a Sweet 16 last year at Maryland. But here's a guy, too, that grew up in the sport. I mean, his dad was a very good college coach, Western Kentucky at Pitt, where he played under his dad at both of those schools. Then he went on and got to a couple NCAA tournaments at Holy Cross. Then he went back to Rick Pitino's staff as an assistant coach. He's been around the game his entire life. And then not only did Kevin have that close relationship with his dad, Ralph, but also his first job was for Rick Pitino. He coached under Pitino at Louisville. He was his right-hand man for a little bit. He still has a really close relationship with Pitino. And if we're talking about close relationships with mentors, you can't have too much more closer relationships than what Willard has with his old man and then with Pitino.
And I think he'll be able to lean on those relationships to gather the wealth as he's entering a new program. I'm sure he's used Pitino and his father in the past when he first took over Iona, shifted to Seton Hall, and even shifted to Maryland to say, well, we're getting bigger and bigger jobs here. What do I do now? What do I need to do to ensure my success? Uh, I'm I can't think of a better person in the sport right now to have on your side than Rick Pitino. I mean, he has won at every level that he possibly can. So I am sure that he will provide good insight. I mean, I know he's competition now, but even among coaches, there's still collegiality when it's one of your guys.
Yeah, the sounding board will still be there, although maybe not the week that the games are about to square off between
Exactly.
each other. Although Pitino's got lots of problems with that in the league as well. Not only does he have Willard, but he's got his son coaching in the league at Xavier as well, Richard. So, Rick is, if anybody can handle it, I have a feeling Rick will figure out a way to thread that needle. So we've got experience is kind of an intangible that'll almost certainly be an asset for Willard and his staff. I think there's another big area of difference that we're going to see between this staff and the last that's going to make a huge difference long term. To me, and we touched on it a little bit maybe, but Kyle Neptune was perpetually building his team year to year. And to a degree, I kind of give him grace on that. I mean, he was taking over a program that had just been to the Final Four, that had won 2 national championships in the previous half decade, and he was replacing a beloved legend. So he had to win now. And sadly, that's also just how college athletics work at the moment, at least to a degree. But maybe the pendulum had swung a little too far in that direction, David. It seems to me Kevin Willard has a very different vision on roster construction.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Willard has said that he wants to follow in Jay Wright's footsteps, and Jay was obviously the big culture guy at Nova. I also think that as the seat gets hotter underneath you, you start taking more swings for the fences and hoping that something sticks so that you can keep your job. So, I Kyle Neptune was just in an era of college basketball rosters turning over year in and year out, and the fire started getting hotter, and he had to try every last thing he could to try and save his job and to uh, have some success at Nova after Jay Wright. With Willard, he's going to be able to go into guys' homes and keep them. He has the name now to be able to stand toe to toe with Dan Hurley and Rick Pitino. Guys know Kevin Willard from the Sweet 16 at Maryland. He's going to have the funds at Nova. We talked last week about the house settlement a little bit, but he's going to have the funds to uh, help as well.
Yeah, and you look at what he's trying to do, and he has been very open about the need to bring in as many guys who are looking to be at Nova for at least 2 years as possible. He's talked about redshirting freshmen. He's talked about the concept of if you are a young guy right now and you're not an automatic one and done type of player, or even a top 20, top 30 freshman in the country, it's probably almost smarter for you to take a red shirt as a freshman, because you'll make more money on the back end of your career once you've learned the college game in your 4th and 5th seasons than you ever would as a true freshman just going through the traditional 4-year route. So he has said that some of the guys in the freshman class have mentioned that they are open to a potential red shirt this year, and that's something that they're going to look at. And with this new house settlement and pay for play situation that you have going, I think the next evolution of the process, you're going to see more teams try to tie guys into multi-year. Well, you can't really sign multi-year contracts, but set up agreements where it's clearly under the understanding of, if you do this year, this is what you're looking for down the line. Next year, here's what you can expect to get. And I think that's how he's trying to set it up. There is a counter question to that. Is it actually realistic in this era of college basketball? Are you going to be able to execute that? Because you can have all the great plans in place that we're building this to build on top of that, and look what will be in 2 or 3 years. All it takes is one team coming in, poaching a player that you weren't planning on leaving, and suddenly all the best laid plans are up in smoke.
No, I agree. And I think it sounds really great to try and convince guys to stay 2 and 3 years. And you have to build those relationships. The problem is those guys have relationships with their parents, they have relationships with their AAU coaches, they have relationships with their high school coaches, and all of those people, they have relationships with their friends from high school. And all of those people are telling them, man, you're the best player I've ever seen. You could go to X, Y, and Z and get 20 minutes a game and score 15, and he's not playing you. So that's where the challenge will come in for Kevin Willard, is making sure that those people on the side who are telling his players that, hey, you could go here, here, and here and actually play a lot of minutes, to get them to buy into what Nova's doing, to get them to buy into his vision of them as a basketball player over the next 2 to 3 years, including a potential NBA career.
Yeah, selling vision is, I think, something he's very good at. I mean, when you build what he built at Seton Hall, which we've seen now how tough it can be to win at Seton Hall, the guys that preceded him, the guys that have followed him, it has been anything but easy. I think it has been that much more remarkable what he was able to accomplish with the Pirates. I think he is a guy that certainly is capable of doing that. Now, the other question that I'm sure we're going to talk about at great length over the course of this long off season, but is worth at least touching on now is, he did become a little bit of a punchline during the NCAA tournament. How much did that damage his reputation, and how much has he had to rehab it on the recruiting trail, talking to parents, talking to kids, and connecting and trying to build that trust back up, even if he really, I don't think, betrayed the trust of his Maryland players. I feel like he was pretty honest, it seems like, from most accounts, considering the fact that he was in it with almost all the Maryland guys that went to the portal. He took two. He was in the final two with two others in terms of their decision on where to go. So if he was lying straight to their face, I don't think they would have been willing to talk to him about following him to Villanova.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what happened in the tournament and his press conference and all that stuff, that is media fodder. I don't think that's necessarily what the players think about him. I don't think that's the relationship he built with them. The fact is that two guys would not have followed him from Maryland if he was, like he said, lying to their faces and saying, I'm here for the long haul. So I think that I don't think it's going to affect his relationship with players on the recruiting trail, in the portal, or anything like that. I think that the guys in the locker room were probably still behind him. I think that the national media, or they might say, "Hey, what was up with this?" But even that is going to die out by November when we actually start playing basketball.
The other thing I think that will be interesting to keep an eye on was he seems to almost want to reestablish an amended version of the culture that Jay Wright built at Villanova, which I think really centered around, attitude was the catchphrase, but earn everything, selfless, blue collar. But he's got to do it on an abridged schedule now. Even if he can get guys to stay multiple years, it's going to be a lot harder to get guys to pay their dues for 2 years to earn their spots in year 3 and year 4. So he's going to have to evaluate better players younger, or bring guys in on the back ends of their careers and get them to buy in to that culture. And I think he's clearly committed to it. He did on the Rothstein podcast last month. He cited a Big East semifinal loss to Nova back in 17, where when he realized just how real the Villanova culture was, Josh Hart was the first guy down to pick up Angel Delgado after he missed a buzzer beater for the win in a Big East semifinal game. And Willard said it made him realize how much he valued what Jay Wright had built and why they were so successful. And I thought it was a really cool story, and I thought it was really well worded by Kevin Willard. And I recommend people to go and check out that interview. I think that was a really good look at Kevin Willard and the guy he is, not the character that he has necessarily been portrayed as. But there is a follow-up question to that. I think the Seton Hall culture was good, and again, they were overachievers. They were blue collar program. I very much enjoyed watching those Seton Hall teams, but as he was telling the story, I couldn't help but notice, it's not exactly the best thing in the world that the other team is the first guy down to pick up your team when it goes wrong. And I guess my point being, I think it's a lot easier to say I want to build what Jay Wright built than actually it is to do it. And that was the special sauce of Jay Wright, that he was able to put it in place and keep it rolling team after team after team.
Well, and I think what Jay had was it was a combination of the fact that he had instilled that culture and his players believed in him, they trusted him, they knew that he would do whatever he could for them. But also he had that he had the winning. And when you start winning, guys trust you a lot more. When you're a guy who they know, hey, if we're in a dogfight, I know I can trust my coach. I know he's going to put me in the right situation. That builds culture, that builds trust between the players and the sideline. So I think Kevin Willard talking is nice and laying the foundation, but ultimately winning is going to do as much good for building that culture as anything. So I hope that he can hit the ground running with his incoming class and year two, because I think that will set him up for success further down the road and getting those good culture guys in.
And if you're watching this, I assume you would probably already have seen it, but if you haven't, go check out the video that Villanova put out last week. It was Kevin Willard mic'd up at practice. I thought it was a really good example of what we've kind of been talking about paying deference to Jay and wanting to continue the good parts of Jay Wright's program. They were going through drills. And at one point, he said, "All right, we got to work on some ball fakes. Jay Wright's here watching practice. We got to do ball fakes in honor of Jay," which I thought was pretty funny as he is trying to get everything in place and get everything in order before the season starts. So we've got an intangible and a philosophical switch when it comes to the program's construction. Those are very meta changes, so to speak. How about we give the people something more concrete? What about on the court? I know it's hard to say for sure, and every coach is going to mold his methods to the team he has at hand. But what do you think is going to look most different in terms of style of play for this year's Villanova team?
Well, I think Kevin Willard wants to run more than he's not a fast break guy by any stretch of the imagination, but he certainly wants to run more than Neptune did. And I think even Jay Wright. I mean, if you look at pace of play under Jay Wright at the peak, Villanova was averaging about 75 possessions per game. Last year, Maryland had 118 possessions per game.
It's a little
So
different. Little different.
yeah, yeah, they're gonna get up and down the court when it's appropriate. I know Willard, he's gonna focus more on ball screens, especially high ball screens, letting his guards try and get downhill, either to kick or to take it all the way to the basket. It's less motion and more ball screens, less off the ball, more just direct on the ball, screen and pop, screen and roll kind of play.
You know, the interesting thing about the tempo, Jay wasn't always that slow. That was something that evolved over the course of his career. I mean, his first successful teams, the Kyle Lowry, Randy Foye, Allen Ray team, they were up and down the floor, shoot the ball early in the clock, go and get it. Four guard offense. They were one of the inventors of that at the high level college game. And then it kind of evolved. It really slowed down with his first Final Four team, actually, the one with Dante Cunningham, when he really played through a post player for the first time in his career, when he had stretch four in Dante, who was able to knock down that mid-range jumper with almost automatic regularity. Then obviously the program hit a little bit of a rough patch, and in the reinvention of the program, the guy all of a sudden just found point guard after point guard after point guard that were just stellar. I mean, you look at the run that Jay Wright had at the end of his career at Villanova. He went from Ryan Arcidiacono to Jalen Brunson. There was a 1-year hole that was supposed to be Phil Booth, but he was really banged up and injured. They brought in a true freshman that obviously did not work out, that ended up transferring to Alabama. So then they turned to Colin Gillespie to run the offense. And all he did was end up becoming an NBA player and take them to a Final Four. When you have that kind of point guard play, playing slow is not a problem because your point guards are making good decisions. You're not giving away possessions. It's actually an advantage if you're a decent defense to play slow, because now you're the number of possessions, and the team that executes better is going to win a low possession game. Kyle Neptune never had that level of point guard play in his defense. The problem was it felt like Kyle Neptune never went away from what Jay Wright did at the tail end of his career. They still played at a very similar tempo, and the mistakes proved lethal for this team down the stretch over and over again. I think that's why you saw so many games that you thought they were in position to have a chance to win slip away, because the little things caught up to them in a game with limited possessions.
Yeah. And I think that comparing Kevin Willard to Kyle Neptune, Willard is much more likely to change his system around the players, whereas it seemed like Neptune was very comfortable, like you said, running that system that Jay ran at the end, and he tried to fit the players into the system. I think that Willard, I mean, at Seton Hall and Iona, he wasn't running as much as he did at Maryland. I mean, he had really good guards at Maryland. I'm not saying he didn't at Seton Hall and Iona, but he could get up and down the court. I think he is more likely to change his style, whether it's he has a real big who can just sit on the block and score, or he has a stretch guy who can pick and pop. I think he is going to be more able to transform his offense to fit the guys that he has in the system.
And I also think he's going to look for more versatile, interchangeable pieces. I think a lot of people were fond of saying that Jay Wright played positionless basketball. I don't know if it was positionless basketball. The guys had roles. They were just interchangeable pieces, and they could fill multiple positions. So if you want to say that's positionless, fine. But I still think they had some structure there. And I think that's what Kevin Willard is going to try to bring back, where as the last 3 years, and again, in Kyle Neptune's defense a little bit, they were so reliant on Eric Dixon, and Eric Dixon essentially had one position. So it was tough to have a lot of interchangeable pieces, and you didn't have a true point guard, which certainly hurts that as well. But now if you look at some of the guys they have in place, Zion Stanford, Matt Hodge, obviously, Malachi Palmer, Bryce Lindsey, these are all guys that I think will be able to play 2-3 different positions, and you'll have a lot of different options on the floor, not just guys you can turn to, but ways you can play with the same groups out there at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you ask Kevin Willard what his ideal system would look like, it would be 1 through 4. He's able to switch on defense. He's able to change them in and out on offense. Probably 4 and 5. He wants to be able to change. It's hard to get a 5 out there on the perimeter, but he probably wants a stretch 5 who can move his feet defensively, can knock down a few shots outside. So I think that it's more of a 1 through 4. We want 4 guys who can play each position there. Obviously, point guard and center are the hardest 2 positions to replicate for anybody. But I think he wants multiple ball handlers, multiple shooters. I mean, what coach doesn't want multiple ball handlers and multiple shooters? But I think he'll really make that a priority.
And I think then when you have that, it allows you to play a little bit faster. And then again, you're not living and dying on every single possession. So I think those will be the big differences on the court. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more, but we're going to have to wait and find those out kind of on the fly. You can't decipher everything at this stage, especially when you're talking about a team that is only bringing back 9%, as we said last week, of its returning scoring from a year ago. All right, so 2 quick additions to our rundown. We are in the early stages of the Holy Nova show and still trying to build an audience. So shout out to Jordan, who reached out over the weekend via email. Jordan, you did not include a last name in the email. So if I know you personally, my bad, and thanks for listening. If I don't, kudos to you for your investigative reporting skills by finding my email. That is impressive. His question, though, David, was, you guys seem certain in the NIL approval process, talking about the House settlement last week, that it would not be allowed long-term, that Deloitte partnership that the NCAA or the schools now running things in terms of the revenue sharing process that they have built with Deloitte to approve what NIL deals can go through. We were skeptical that would be allowed long term. He wants to know why we were so skeptical when these administrators have worked months putting this deal in place. You really think they would miss that badly?
So I think I'm skeptical just because, I mean, it's a plus that the NCAA is not running this. The enforcement arm is now going to let the College Sports Commission that is supposed to approve anything over $600 and try and decipher if that's an appropriate deal. One, I think that's an impossible task. I don't know how you put a dollar value on what the local car dealership thinks that a player's cameo is worth. But 2, I just think that it can work because the schools are so involved that I feel like at some point it's just going to be a rubber stamp. The commission is going to get to the point where the schools are going to say, no, you just approve everything. And then we're no better off than we were before.
I guess that's my point. I think if they actually have the idea of we are going to stick to this cap is in place, it is here, and then anything on the side will have to be a legitimate market value. They're going to set the market value, and they are not going to let these boosters essentially pay athletes to play through the guise of marketing deals. I don't think that'll work for two reasons that we touched on last week. Title IX, and the best example of that is what they've done at Texas Tech in softball. They just re-upped the pitcher for $2 million. The entire budget is $20 million. Last year, Ohio State paid its football team $20 million. If you're going to play a softball pitch or pay a softball pitcher $2 million, some teams are paying their football teams $20 million. How are you going to, A, make sure that you're getting this money out to all of your student athletes and you're not just making sure football players are taken care of? B, how is this not the definition? And you would understand this much better than I, having gone to law school, having a lot higher level of intellect than myself, and being a lawyer. But how is that not restraint of trade to say you can make this much amount of money? We are telling you what you can actually make, and here's your limit. You're going to have to deal with it. It just doesn't seem like the courts are going to let them do that, considering they seem to lose every court case that has the width of that type of behavior over the last, 3-4 years.
So I think the problem is going to be that it is restraint of trade, but somebody has to sue at some point. It's not like the
Well,
court's just going to.
you don't think a player is going to sue the first time Deloitte says no, you can't make $1 million?
I am certain a player is going to sue the first time Deloitte says that, and I would almost bet money that Deloitte will then say, "Oh, we looked at it again, and we're going to approve this contract."
Right.
I just think it's going to become basically whatever the big schools say goes, and the commission is going to basically become a toothless, uh, toothless, and they're going to do and approve anything that's wanted by the big players.
I mean, then why'd you go to law school? Go work for Deloitte, for goodness sake. If you're just going to approve everything, you're getting paid for it. I don't understand. You're talking about how they're so short on money. What's the point in setting all of this up if you're just going to end up having to rubber stamp anything anyway?
Because it takes power away from the NCAA. And I mean, Greg Sankey has said it that the SEC, what did he say, about 2030, the SEC was no longer going to be an NCAA member. So every little thing they can do to remove power from the NCAA helps the big schools get closer to that goal of no longer having the NCAA as oversight or enforcement. Not saying that's a bad thing. I don't always love what the NCAA does, but it is scary. What could be in 2 to 3 years. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I don't think it's going to happen next year. But at some point, kids are going to get a little louder as this commission tries to not approve contracts. And then what's going to happen? The schools are going to say, oh, okay, we'll just give up. We'll lose this 5-star quarterback to Alabama's going to lose a 5-star quarterback to Texas. No, they're gonna put up a big funk.
Yeah, it is kind of scary when you think about it. It does feel like we are sliding down a hill and we're just trying to put every little rock in the path of this cart that is moving faster and faster in the direction that we all seem to want to avoid, but nobody can figure out how to avoid it ending up there. And potential super league and all that thing that everybody talks about that is got to be a disaster for college sports. But we will put that in the distant future and try to figure out something else in the meantime. But Jordan, that is why we don't think that the Deloitte thing is going to work out the way it is designed to, at least in terms of the way it's been being sold right now. One other piece of feedback. We got Patrick Madden, who writes for the Big East blog, contributes to the Pirates Vibe show about Seton Hall on this Big East Energy Network. Highly recommend that one as well. It's a good show. We're actually going to have the host Brian on from that show in a couple weeks to give Villanova fans an idea of what it's like to root for a team that's coached by Kevin Willard, because he lived through it during the time at Seton Hall, obviously. But it was Patrick Nadd who pointed out that my friendly fire on Eric Dixon last week when mentioning Kerry Kittles and trying to talk about the great one, Kerry, and how he lost his scoring record last season, that was probably uncalled for. So apologies, Patrick, if you didn't like the fire at Eric Dixon. Meant no disrespect to Eric Dixon, but David, I mean, come on, 5 years to set a record versus 4. It seems like it's two different records, it feels like. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy Nova. We hope to have another show coming up later in the week. We are working on a special guest, so hopefully we will be back later in the week to talk some Villanova women's basketball. Also, we'd love to get you involved in the show. Leave a question in the comments below, and we'll get it answered next week. Also, a reminder to like and subscribe this video to help us through the YouTube algorithm. If you'd rather listen in the car, we're also on Spotify, so please subscribe to Holy Nova there. For David White, I'm Matt Janus. This is Holy Nova, part of the Big East Energy Network.